Where I'm at currently in my skating career, I am both a competitor and a skating coach. So even though I do coach kids, I still have my own competitions, I still do my own training with my own private coach. And my coach used to be the one to choreograph all of my routines. But recently we've started working together on choreography, not only because I sometimes have a very specific vision in my head of what I want a routine to look like, but also because since I am now a coach, I need to get better at choreography. My next competition is coming up in October, and the choreography for this program is definitely way more of a joint effort than it ever has been before, which I'm very proud of. However, as I said earlier, I am also a coach, which means I have to choreograph routines for my students. And I love my coach. She's very great about helping me whenever I have questions, especially with choreography, because there are some rules in figure skating that can make it very limiting on the things you can do. And sometimes I get a little bit frustrated working within the confines of what are necessary for competition. So she's been really helpful in teaching me how to choreograph things properly, how to time the music right, because I also have no background in music, so I don't know what 4 counts means. When they tell me to hold it for 4 counts, I don't know what that means. However, for this week's video, I wanted to take you guys with me as I choreographed by myself for the first time. I'm going to be choreographing for one of my students, and I'm going to be doing it by myself for the first time. This is for a competition that's going to be in November, so it is cutting it a little bit close. But to be fair, both my student and I have been having some medical problems. So I would just like to go through the process with you of choreographing a routine. The rules in figure skating competitions are kind of like a double-edged sword. I find it very difficult to work the rules into my artistic vision and not the other way around. For example, with this choreography that I'm doing for this student, it is very limited on the amount of things he's allowed to do on the ice. Skaters all progress at different rates, but at the same time they have to categorize them somehow to make sure competitions are fair. For this particular student in competition, he skates under USFCS as opposed to ISI. The rules are a little bit different between the two, but we're going to focus on USFCS because that's what we need for this student. The competition is usually broken up into categories. For whichever level your skater is at, they will then have a list of things that they must complete during competition in order to get any marks at all. They can do anything below level. For example, if they're at a level 4, they can do anything that's in the level 3 category, but if they then try to do a basic 5 or basic 6 skill, then they'll be docked points. And this can be a little bit frustrating for certain kids, my student specifically, who has some issues with things like edge work, but really likes to do jumps and spins. Now obviously he can't do proper jumps and spins without proper edge work, but kids don't really understand or even care about that sort of thing. So just knowing that about my student, I know how frustrated he's going to be with the confines of what's allowed at his level. He'll be competing at a basic 4 level, which means in program he's going to be required to do forward edges on a circle, 4 to 6 forward crossovers consecutively in both directions, 4 to 6 backwards half swizzle pumps, again both directions and consecutively. He's gonna have to do backwards glides on both feet, and then he's allowed a 2-foot spin, but he's not allowed his 1-foot spin, and it has to be less than 4 rotations. So this can feel very restrictive for a student who hates edge work, especially since that's what the majority of this is. Crossover is half pumps, and then straight up just edges, just pure edges. I already know he's not going to have a fun time with this program, but I know his edge work is not good enough to move him up to a basic 5. So I'm going to have to keep this in mind while I'm choreographing this program because I don't want it to be boring for 2 reasons. I don't want the judges to look at it and be like, this is very boring, because even though the judges understand that it's a basic 4 program, it's not going to be super fancy, you still want your program to be interesting even at that level. And the second reason is I really don't want my skater to be bored. Figure skating is supposed to be fun, and it really bothers me when coaches make it not fun anymore for the skater. And I know he's gonna have to buckle down and work on this program, so I want to make it fun for him. Something that goes a long way to making the programs fun for skaters, and something that I love to do, is to pick music that's not boring classical music. Classical music, I love classical music. The skater that's doing this actually loves classical music. He's only 8, but he still enjoys classical music. But classical music is boring, like 90% of the time. There are some amazing figure skating programs that are to classical music. Sometimes classical music gives you the feel you need for a skating program. However, if you have an 8-year-old little boy, most likely he's not going to want to skate to Swan Lake, you know? And I always also like to have my skaters pick their own music. A lot of coaches at my rink would rather pick for their students, as there's a lot of coaches who will have like 5 or 6 students that all skate to the same piece, or if you're a level 5 you will skate to this music kind of thing. I'm sure that's super helpful for the coach, especially if you have so many students, so that you don't get confused with whose music is whose, or so you don't have to be constantly re-choreographing for each different level, for each different student. But even in my own programs, I like fun music. They used to be way more strict on the type of music you can listen to. They're still pretty strict about it in the higher levels, but at the level I'm skating at and the level my student is skating at, it's not that big a deal. Time length, however, is a big deal. The longest I can skate to is a minute 40, the longest my student can skate to is a minute 10. So I like to let my students pick their own music, but I don't just let them have free range, because they might pick something that's just unskateable to, or they're not at the level that would make sense for them to skate at. I like to go in and handpick a few that I think they'll like or that I think will be fun. For example, this student's very first performance was to Jurassic Park, because he really loves dinosaurs. He absolutely loved it, he enjoyed himself so much, and he had such a fun time skating, and that is my main goal. So for this competition, I got a bunch of music together, cut it to length, and I sent it to his mom. His mom had him listen to it, and he decided on Mario. He's going to be skating to the Mario theme, but the Ice World one, I don't remember exactly what it's called, but it's Super Mario Bros, and it's going to be the ice levels, not just like the regular theme. It's fun, it's bouncy, it's just fast enough pace to where my skater likes to go very fast, so it's just fast enough pace to where he can have fun without, falling down and losing all his teeth. And hopefully this kind of music will make it actually interesting to watch. So obviously I'm not going to be able to play the song in this video to hear what it sounds like, but basically I just cut this piece down to 1 minute and 8 seconds, I think I got it down to. And then I would just listen to what I cut, and then as I was listening to it, I was kind of like looking over his requirements, and then I also added in what he was allowed to do. So anything from lower levels that I knew he liked doing. And then I was just thinking about the music. I sketched out just like the super basic of what the rink looks like to help me with placement in my head as I'm thinking about it. Then I basically combined it all. Thinking about what he's good at, thinking about what he likes, thinking about how to incorporate the things that are necessary for him to score any points, and then incorporating them into the song, but also into the rink itself. Crossovers are one of his biggest struggles. Whenever I have to teach crossovers, or whenever I do crossovers even in my own program, one of my favorite things to do is to do figure eights with them. It's a great way to get used to doing very few crossovers to gain a lot of speed. It's a good practice of bending your knees, getting very low on your knees, twisting your upper body in the right direction. So I made sure to incorporate that into this program, because he does have to do 4 to 6 crossovers in both directions. So by doing a figure eight, you're automatically doing both directions. So he only has to do crossovers 1 time in his program, and then he's done with them. The only thing is he does have to do them well, because he will not get another chance at them. That's something we can talk about and work on, and that's why I have written out 6 crossovers instead of 4 to 6, because if he does 4 good ones with 2 not so good ones, he will still get full marks. Another thing I was worried about in this program is there's a lot of backwards, which isn't so much a problem for my student. It's just there's not a lot of options for him to turn around. At this low level, we're actually not allowed to do 3 turns, so the only way he can get from forward to backwards is by awkwardly stepping, or to do a 2-foot turn. I know my student has some trouble with 2-foot turns while he's moving, so I have 1 in here, which might be replaced, but for now, I have him doing just like a 2-foot turn to get from forward to backwards after his crossovers, because another thing he has to do is his backwards pumps on the circle. So we can just have him do pumps on the circle, and then he has to do backwards glides on both feet. So I figure he can come right out of pumps, do his back glide for as long as he can. If he can't make it all the way to the next circle, we'll just do some backward swizzles. Again, with the backwards pumps, he has to do them in both directions, which is why at this level, this can feel very repetitive and very boring to students. It's almost like you're doing the same thing twice all the time. Backwards edges 2 times, 1 for each foot. Backwards pumps 2 times for each foot. And then crossovers 2 times for each direction. It can feel very repetitive and very boring, and visually it can also be very boring. I talked about doing the figure eight earlier in the program. If I did the same thing with the pumps, it would look really boring because I literally did a figure eight on this side of the rink, then just skated over to the side, did another figure eight. That's super boring. So instead we're going to do half swizzle pumps around the middle circle, go into a backwards glide into the next circle, and then do our half swivel pumps around that circle, do a backwards glide to the first circle, then we can do our beautiful spin into our ending position. This is a super bare bones program. This doesn't include any opening section, although I know for a fact I want to have about 4 seconds of just opening. If you've played Mario before, you probably know that as you're going along in the level, the little Goombas will actually jump at certain parts in the music. There's a specific sound that whenever it plays and whatever music is playing, all of the Goombas will just like do a little jump. So at the beginning of this piece, there's like 4 seconds of just music and then that noise. So I thought it would be really fun if there was like a 4-second like starting thing before he actually starts skating, and then on that noise he does a little jump. Because a 2-foot jump is actually a 2-foot just like jump. We call it a bunny hop, which is very confusing because we call a different move a bunny hop. That's actually at one of the very basic levels, so he would be allowed to do that in his program, and I think that would be a fun, just exciting start to the piece. And then obviously I won't know timing wise until he actually gets on the ice and does it. Obviously he has to do everything in under 1 minute and 10 seconds. So I don't want to load his program with things that'll be confusing and hard to remember. But at the same time, we want this to be as interesting as possible. I also haven't added any stops into this program. I don't see them as necessary at this point. I think if he has some problems with his 2-foot turn, we might implement a stop there to make it a little bit easier. I could find no information on what level backward stops are technically at, so I don't even know if he's technically allowed to do a backward stop or not, but because his backwards glides are in between his other backwards elements, I think that'll slow him down enough to where he won't fall down and hurt himself. Ending with the spin, hopefully right in front of the judges. They usually sit up in that corner. His spins are pretty good, so I feel very confident about having him do it right in front of the judges. Also, he really enjoys the spins, so I feel like ending with something he really likes that'll probably make him smile really big right in front of the judges is always a good bet. So this is basically your first draft at choreography. The next step would be tomorrow, because that's when I have a lesson with him. We would take this and work with it. We'll run it through without music, we'll see what he's struggling with, we'll see what he's doing really well. We'll work with it for a few lessons without music, we'll then add in the music, see how the timing feels. If something feels off, we'll move it around. If he's zooming through the program and there's not enough in it, then I have a list of things that are allowed that we can do, that we can try and add in there to add more visual appeal, and also make it a little bit more interesting for him where he's not bored out of his mind. If he's struggling with something very specific, like that 2-foot turn, then we have something to help him out a little bit. And then from there on, it's just practice, practice, practice. We'll add in some fancy arm motions, some good faces, a lot of eye contact with the judges, and then it'll just be polishing and practicing until it's perfect. Then it'll be competition and time to wow the judges. But I hope you found it interesting taking a little bit of a peek at some things that I have to do as a figure skating instructor. I enjoy doing choreography. I just have a bad habit of second guessing myself. And also with programs where it feels very restrictive, it can also be kind of difficult to make it feel interesting for the skater and also the judges. I'm glad I work with some great coaches right now, and I think this is going to turn out great. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you all in the next one.